I'm with Billy Kelleher, who is the Fianna Fáil MEP for the south of Ireland, the southern part of the Republic of Ireland. And Billy, people where I'm from in southeast England are obviously very concerned about Brexit, but we know that the Irish border is a hugely important issue. So really interested to know from your perspective, what do you make of Boris Johnson's latest proposals?
Well, I think they'd be very damaging, being truthful. I mean, the Good Friday Agreement is about peace on the island of Ireland. It's not just about trade and commerce. It's actually about how people live on a daily basis in the border areas. People go to school in Northern Ireland, they live in the Republic. People in Northern Ireland come to the Republic for healthcare. There's 30,000 crossings every day of the week. It's just an issue that if you put any impediment to that free movement of people, goods, services, and diminish people's quality of life, it could have very serious implications. Bearing in mind is that the Good Friday Agreement is about peace. It's about ensuring that the different traditions on the island can live together and mutually respect each other. But if you do put a border in place, it would be very damaging to, I think, inflame republicanism, and it would certainly, I think, undermine the good relations on the island and also between the UK and Ireland itself.
Yeah, and if there was a hard border to come back, what kind of repercussions could actually happen from that, do you think?
Well, a hard border would mean that it would have to be manned by some form of customs. So then you may have customs personnel on the border. That very quickly could attract dissident paramilitaries. Then you would have to put PSNI officers to mind them, and then that could attract further dissident activity, and eventually you may have to put British soldiers to mind the customs points because of the potential threats to personnel, and that would just bring us back to where we have come from, which was and people in the southeast of England would have read it, but people in Ireland lived with it, where there was appalling atrocities carried out by both loyalists and Republicans in their various names. And the vast majority of Irish people have rejected this on a continual basis politically, but they were there all the time. But the Good Friday Agreement was a community-based peace initiative. It started to bed down. People started to accept that peace, reconciliation, the rule of law, and all of these things are now part and parcel of life. Boris Johnson's deal, in my view, or his proposal for a deal, would diminish that. We cannot have a hard border, because a hard border is, as I said, more than just about trade. It's about how people live.
And in terms of what the Irish government's been asking for over 3 years, that's stayed completely consistent, hasn't it?
Yes, I mean, the backstop isn't about... first of all, I would prefer if Britain wasn't leaving the European Union. I fervently think that Britain, has played a very important role in Europe for many, many years, in terms of how we look at how we structure society, in commerce, in trade. It has played a very, very productive role. The fact that they're leaving is a decision that the people made themselves, so I have to respect that. I prefer they weren't. But in the meantime, we have to try and point out what the backstop is about. And it is an insurance policy that if Britain leaves, that they will have to stay aligned until such time as alternatives can be put in place in terms of technology or other ways of ensuring that there's no hard border. So it's just an insurance policy to underpin the Irish government's position, but more importantly, to underpin the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement, because that states in the Good Friday Agreement about the all-island economy, about respecting traditions. Bear in mind that a lot of people in the north, the majority of the people in the north, did not vote to leave the European Union. A majority of people actually said we want to stay in the European Union. So to put a hard border across the island would undermine that concept of identity. The vast majority of the nationalist community in the north want to identify as Irish and European. They will have no access to the European institutions. They won't be able to elect MEPs. They won't have access to European courts and all of these things. So that does diminish their entitlement as Irish citizens and European citizens. So I just think that the Prime Minister really has to, assess the Good Friday Agreement, look at what it's about, and I don't mean this in a dismissive way. I just don't feel that they understand or comprehend the importance of that particular agreement and what has flowed from it. And the hard border is a signal that that particular agreement is being torn up.
And Billy, and finally, I appreciate as an Irish politician, you don't feel that you can interfere or get directly involved in British politics, and I wouldn't ask you to. But if the Liberal Democrats were successful in stopping Brexit, or let's say the UK wanted an extension in order to enable a further referendum, is that something like an extension you would support?
Absolutely, and I spoke in the Parliament some time ago, and also at committee level, I've urged that if there is a requirement for an extension, to facilitate either an agreement or another democratic assessment by the British people of where they are in Brexit in terms of a referendum or a revocation or a general election, that the European Union should facilitate that. That's the Irish government's position. It certainly is my party position. And, as I said, I would love if there was a change of mindset among British politicians and eventually among the British people to look at where they are in the world and say that, in Europe, at the heart of Europe, making decisions that better themselves and better Europe. And I can say, as an Irish person, our closest ally on many issues in the European Union over many, many years in terms of the directives, legislation, was the British government itself. And I can say that as a minister in a previous Irish governments where we would be negotiating issues, and very often our closest ally were the British themselves, and they did shape it. So I think if they actually had embraced Europe a little bit more, we wouldn't be having this discussion, and we'd have a better Europe with Britain in it.
Yeah.
So Billy, I wish you well.
Thanks very much, Billy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.